This one is gonna be a salty one for some of you, whether it's obstruction of justice, fraud, or just straight up negligence. This guy has broken a lot of laws. We have it all in today's most amazing top 10 list. Coming in number 10, we have obstruction of justice. Remember when Trump was under investigation for being in cahoots with Russia? Well, during this time, the person who was leading the investigation was James Comey. He was the director of the FBI. Well, Trump obviously didn't want the investigation to go forward, which is strange for someone who has nothing to hide. And so he told Comey that he had to stop. When Comey neglected to cohere to Trump's wishes, he was then let go from his position as director of the FBI. After that, the next dude who came through kept the investigation going, and Trump tried to have him fired as well. Thankfully, that didn't go through. He also tried to get the White House counsel to cover up the fact that he was trying to fire these people. This is all super shady. There's also several reports of him trying to intimidate witnesses that were supposed to stand trial in this case. I mean, I don't know a lot about the law or the government. I mean, I make top 10 lists, but if you were to tell all that stuff to me, I would think that it was super shady. Coming in at number 9, we have leveraging power against his critics. I don't care what your politics are. This entire presidential run has been a weird one. I don't remember a time when people boarded up windows before election results came out because they thought people were going to riot. A part of that is Trump has been doing things like trying to double the shipping rates for companies that he didn't like. It's no secret that if you cross Trump, he will find some way to get back at you, or at least he will try to find some way to get back at you. Now with Amazon, he wanted the Postmaster General to double their shipping rates. This would cost the company billions. Now, while I think Amazon should be taxed out the butt because they are one of the wealthiest companies in the world, and they will go out of their way to make their workers' working conditions nearly inhospitable, the reason that Trump was digging into the Jeff Bezos-owned company is because of another company that the multi-billionaire owns. In fact, Bezos also owns the Washington Post, which has been writing a ton of anti-Trump articles. So as a way to take down the billionaire, or at least make his life harder, he wanted to cost him billions in shipping rates, and trying to force the Postmaster General to change shipping rates because you have a grudge against someone is highly illegal. Coming in at number 8, we have tried to strong-arm park services. You would think that if you're the head of the United States Park Services, that you wouldn't need to worry about the President of the United States trying to strong-arm you. But when it comes to the last 4 years in the United States, anything is possible. 2020 was just the cherry on top. The last few years before that have been nuts. But I think you all remember when Donald Trump made the claim that the crowd that came out to see him at his inauguration speech was the biggest that there has ever been. He claimed it went all the way to the Washington Monument. And here's the thing, it just didn't. It wasn't the biggest crowd ever to come out, and that's okay. I don't know why he felt this was a hill he needed to die on, but for whatever reason, he wanted to rewrite history to say that he had the biggest crowd ever. No one bought this because there were pictures and you could clearly see that it was not the biggest crowd ever. But Trump wasn't going to let the pictures ruin this for him, and he tried to pressure the head of the United States Park Services to make false claims that it was actually the largest gathering. They humbly refused, but Trump still stands by saying that it was the largest gathering for inauguration speech ever. Coming in at number 7, we have attacking the press. I mean, fake news wasn't even a part of our regular lexicon before Trump. He made us all start saying that catchphrase, and I will admit that in some ways it was good. We started to judge media more closely and sift through news and find out if what we were looking at was an accurate assessment of what happened. But at the same time, it is the president's job, among many other things, to give freedom to the press. That is an important part of freedom, to have people who can tell you the news, what's going on, and what needs to be heard without it being silenced by the most powerful man in the country. And this goes beyond him just calling heads of media companies and journalists bad names. No, Trump went out of his way to try and stop the merger between AT&T and Time Warner. Now, why would he want to do something like that, and what does this have to do with media? Well, CNN is owned by Time Warner, and because of how CNN has been reporting on Trump for his entire presidency, he wasn't really happy with them, so he tried to ruin this merger. He was unsuccessful in this, but he tried nonetheless. Coming in at number 6, we have using government money to fund his businesses. We all know that Trump's main form of income is real estate. This dude rakes in tons of cash from hotels all around the world. But if you look into some of these places, they aren't doing so hot. So what has Trump done to boost up some of his properties that seem like they're going into the toilet? Well, he used government expenses to go on expensive trips to his own hotels. So the government is paying him a ton of money for him and his family to stay at his own hotels. So the money comes right from the government pot and then goes into his pocket. Now, I don't think it matters where you sit on the political spectrum. That whole thing is super shady, and it's highly highly illegal to use government funds to help your businesses while you are the president. Something else he has done is offer up one of his hotels as a venue for the G7 summit, which would have allowed him to rake in even more cash on the government dime. Coming in at number 5, we have fraud. Outside of being the president, Trump has been sued for fraud several times. It doesn't matter if you're looking into his hotels, one of his many businesses, or his Trump University. Actually, right when he was elected president, he had to pay out the sum of $25 million to close 3 different settlements, and all of those were linked to his Trump University. Apparently, a university that has no official standing was actually giving people an education that they couldn't do anything with. Who would have thought? There was also the fact that Trump had to pay out for misusing a charity for political gain. Coming in number 4, we have hidden phone calls between Trump and Putin. Now, when 2 political leaders talk over the phone, it's customary to record the conversation and give a readout to the public. This way people can have an idea of what's going on with foreign relations, and we can all sleep a little better at night. Well, in a phone call between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, no readout was offered up. Now, why would this be? Well, the official statement was that the White House turned off the recorder. You think when you're the president of the United States and you're suspected to be working with Russia to rig elections, you probably would want to have that conversation available to the public so there wouldn't be that much suspicion. But it turns out that Trump is fine with the suspicion, and we will never know what those two talked about, but I'm sure everything is on the up and up. Coming at number 3, we have advocating political and police violence. I mean, I think we'd do a whole other list on the amount of times that some of the hate groups in this world have been protected by the President of the United States. There was the time that hate groups killed people in Charlottesville and he tried to play it down. There was the time that he was questioned about the Proud Boys and he said stand by and stand down, whatever the hell that means. And with both of those, he was failing to protect his people from domestic threats, which is a job of the president, and if you fail to do so, you will be impeached and potentially jailed. And that is just a small piece of what he has done. During the 2020 protests, he sent out secret police that were arresting people in unmarked vehicles, and the people that were arresting weren't marked to be any sort of law enforcement. That is super spooky. Turns out that these guys were border patrol officers that Trump was sending out, and the local law enforcement had no idea this was happening and was actually furious because it was making their jobs so much harder. Also, they were tear gassing and arresting the press. So that's that. And also, he called for violence on January 6th, and now there's violence. Coming in at number 2, we have working with foreign countries to dig up dirt on his competition. I mean, come on. If you were doing this as a regular person, you would be arrested for sure. But for those of you who don't know, during the 2016 election, Trump had several meetings with Russian officials to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. There are reports that he told high-ranking Russian officials to dig up dirt on Hillary Clinton, and then the whole email thing happened. Which, when we're really breaking it down, it was a good thing to have all those emails leaked because it showcased how much of a horrible person she is. But at the same time, that is still very illegal. Then we come to the 2020 election where Donald Trump is now the president, and so anything he does that's illegal would be amplified tenfold. There were phone calls leaked between him and the president of Ukraine, where Donald Trump told him that he would withhold military help unless the Ukraine government used its power to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. And when the press asked him why he did this and why he thought it was okay, he said the White House does this all the time. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I sure as hell hope they don't. Then he also did the same thing with China. He offered to be more lenient with trade agreements if China went to investigate Hunter Biden. And finally, the number 1 spot is negligence. This has been the biggest charge that people have been trying to chase down Trump with because it folds into so many different areas. First, there was the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico and how he tried to stop any sort of relief fund money to be distributed. Money that is set aside for this exact kind of situation. Yeah, he tried to have that money withheld so it could be used for different states. And because of this, somewhere around 3,000 Puerto Ricans died waiting for help. There was also the protest that happened in America where billions of dollars of damages were caused to buildings and businesses, and the president never addressed any of this. Every other president has stood up during a time of protest and made some sort of political move to help their people. Trump didn't, and some say this caused more damage than it should have. And finally, there is the coronavirus. With the lack of precautions that were brought forward by the president, his inability to wear a mask, and so many other false claims about the virus, the United States is leading the world in deaths with COVID-19. So yeah, I think that was pretty negligible. Anyways guys, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm your host Jay Arena, and I'll see you on the next one. And here's the thing, it just didn't. Sorry, it's a bug. It's like a spider or something hanging from a web. I mean, we're seeing it right the f now. He called for violence, and there's violence.